Regent's Reign, Chapter 1, Overdue Explanations. Gwen paced the dusty throne room. She couldn't find Gaius. She knew Merlin had gone with the others, but Gaius was supposed to have stayed behind. She reached for the sword they'd left her when a creak of the outside door echoed through the halls. "Gwen?" Elian's voice echoed through the hall, and Gwen ran to her brother, who caught her in a hug. "We're alive too, you know," Gawain teased. Elian smacked him in the arm. Gwen pulled back. "Where are the others? What happened?" Her voice was shaking. "Well, there's a lot to clean up back in Camelot. We're here to pick you up," Gawain said, pulling an apple out of his pack on his hip. He tossed it to Gwen, who barely caught it, and pulled out a second one, taking a big bite as he grinned at Elian. "We won?" Gwen said, her knees shaking. Elian pulled her into another hug. "We did. Thanks to your boy Lancelot and Merlin. Apparently they got cut off from the warning bell. Ended up stumbling across the cup which they spilled. That took out the army. Might have killed Morgause. We're still looking for her body. And Morgana," Elian explained. Gwen let out a shaking breath. "Is everyone all right?" Gwen asked. "Lancelot's wounded. Merlin, too. He's got a slash across the back. Nothing too deep, but Gaius has him confined to bed for the time being. Merlin got thrown into a wall. Her shoulder's dislocated. But she's still helping Gaius treat everyone else who suffered under Morgana's reign. We should be getting back, though," Elian explained. Gwen nodded and practically ran out the door of the old fortress. The trip to Camelot, when they reached the road, was short. Gwen and Elian had the forethought to bring her a horse. It was a relief to see the crimson flags flying above the citadel, the glint of gold on the fabric assuring her that the golden dragon of the Pendragons was again flying above the Camelot. The courtyard was awash with people. Many of them smiled and warmly greeted Gwen, Elian, and Gawain. Gwen caught hold of Lila, one of the other maids. "Have you seen Merlin?" she asked, forcing a smile. "She's in the hospital. We've set up in the throne room," Lila said, and Gwen nodded, her thanks making her way up the stairs. She could feel a bit of something like panic in her mind. She had been stewing for near a full day on the revelation that Merlin had magic. If Gaius was to be believed, she had always had magic. Quite a few things made sense now. Things Gwen had never really understood added up with the knowledge that someone with magic had been shielding them from the worst of it. When she arrived in the throne room, it was lined with cots and beds, mostly filled with guards, knights, and soldiers, only a few villagers and servants here and there. Most were resting. Gaius was doing his rounds, but Merlin was nowhere in sight. Gwen rushed over to him, as Arthur, who had been speaking to one of the knights on a bed, gestured Elian and Gawain over to him. "Gaius, where's Merlin?" Gwen asked. The physician's face fell slightly, a worry flashing in his eyes that she only saw because she was looking for it. "I just want to talk to her. Please. After everything, I think I deserve that much," Gwen said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's treating Sir Lancelot in the physician's quarters. He's slashed across the back. He will be fine." "It wasn't deep," he assured. "Go on. I can handle what's left here. And see if you can get Merlin to take something for her shoulder," Gaius ordered, shooing Gwen along. She rushed off. The halls were abuzz of activity. On her way to the physician's quarters, she ran into George, looking haggard, and carrying a tray of food, steaming hot from the kitchens. "Gwen, we feared you among the dead. I'm glad you're all right," he said, grasping her hand. She smiled. "After I snuck Sir Leon out, my brother wanted me as far from the fighting as possible. Are you taking that to the physician's chambers?" she asked, gesturing to the tray. "Yes, actually. One of Arthur's new knights was wounded. Arthur asked us to send something up to them. The kitchen's working overtime at the moment. With everyone we lost," he trailed off. Gwen's throat closed with unshed tears. Many of the castle staff had been in the crowd Morgana's men had fired into in their farce of an execution for the Knights of Camelot. The steward had been among the fallen, along with one of the younger washerwomen, Lyra. Gwen eased the tray from him. Best get back to Mary. I'll take this. Let her know I'll be down to the kitchens as soon as Gaius and Merlin don't need me anymore. She assured. He nodded gratefully and left. Gwen made her way to the physician's chambers and gently pushed the door open with her hip. Lancelot was laying on the bed, wincing slightly as a poultice was dabbed across a freshly stitched wound across his back by Percival. Merlin was overseeing this, pouting slightly from her spot at the table, her arm in a sling. Gwen cleared her throat. When Merlin spotted her, her expression grew wary. I brought you something to eat. She closed the door behind her. She set down the tray and glanced at Merlin. Can we talk? She asked, looking up at the girl's own room. She nodded, following Gwen into the room after handing Percival a large roll of bandages for Lancelot. You lied. The whole time, Gwen said. Of course I lied, Gwen. Who's going to walk into Camelot and announce that they were born with magic? Even I'm not that stupid, Merlin said, sitting on her bed. But you never told me about any of it. You knew about Morgana, too, didn't you? Gwen asked, shaking her head. Would you have believed me? Would you have listened to me or her? The less you knew, the less danger you were in. Would you have ever told me? I don't know. Maybe. But I haven't really ever told anyone without something happening to force it out of me, she admitted, staring down at her hand in her lap. Lancelot knew. You killed the griffin. He said so in the clearing. Its hide could only be pierced by an enchanted blade, so technically we killed the griffin. I enchanted his lance. He still wielded it. It was you who cured my father from that plague, wasn't it? Gwen asked, finally putting the pieces together. How many times do we owe you our lives? You owe me nothing. Camelot is my home, and I will defend it with everything I am, even if most of that would get me tossed on a pyre, Merlin said, looking up. There were tears in her eyes, mixing with the conviction there. As if Arthur would let that happen, ever. Gwen laughed, and Merlin's eyes dropped. You need to tell him, you know. He deserves to know. Not now. Not after what all of Camelot has just been through. Not yet. But someday? Gwen asked, stepping over to Merlin and holding out a hand to her. After a moment, Merlin took her hand, and Gwen pulled her friend into a gentle embrace. Someday.